fifth graders. I'm here today to tell you all about our new vocabulary for our newest unit, which is ecosystems. But before we begin, I wanted to start by giving you a little bit of an overview of the unit. So what we'll be working on this week is the first chunk of ecosystems. There are three. The first one has to do with how things are organized in ecosystems. We will talk more about that in just a minute. The majority of the vocabulary words have to do with that in this chunk. Next week, we're going to get into the second chunk, which is all about how energy flows in an ecosystem. All energy, just as a little prelude, starts with the sun. Go figure, just like the water cycle. That's an abiotic system. This is a biotic system or a living system. So we'll talk about how energy moves from the sun through the whole ecosystem. And then we're going to get into the third chunk, maybe in 2 weeks, possibly a little bit further down than that. And we'll start to talk about what different kinds of ecosystems there are. What are the features of a tropical rainforest? What are some of the features that you might see in a deciduous forest, which is a different kind of forest, and you live in one? So let's get started. Please notice that I put everyone's pictures here. All of my favorite people are featured right here on our slideshow today. First thing I wanted to do before we even got started with the breakdown was talk about Read and Write for Google Chrome. Some of you have already been using this, and I'm going to recommend that you start using it for the Google breakdowns. So I want to pull up my screen and show you where the Read-Write app is. So the Read-Write app is right here at the top. It looks like a little puzzle piece. If you do not have it, you can get it by going to the Chrome store and adding it to Chrome. And it's called Read and Write. I think it's for Google, and it's a Google program. It should be preloaded on every Chromebook that is a CMS Chromebook. What's special about Read and Write is that once you click on it, 8 years go by. Oh, there it is. Nope, went away again. It will bring up a bar at the top of your screen and will give you the option to do a handful of things. Oh, it wants me to log in. It might do that the first time for you as well. I don't think I've used it on my Chromebook before or my laptop. And the part that I'm interested in you using for the breakdowns is the text to speech, because we need to be able to use words somewhere from 7 to 10 times before we even start to write them and use them in different contexts. So if you go to the top, you'll notice that there's a handful of different options. You've got checking, that's more checking your work. Prediction, I don't really want you to use that. There is a dictionary if you need it, and a picture dictionary. It offers you the opportunity to play, pause, and stop. So if you highlight text and you go up to play, it will say the words that you highlight. That's really helpful if you don't know how to say a word. That's really helpful if you are someone who knows that you struggle with reading, but you still want to go through an article. The pause and the stop have to do with that. This is a screenshot reader that works kind of in the same way. But more than anything else, what you want is over here, a couple down, that says talk and type. You'll have to allow your microphone. And then once this red button is on the left-hand side of your screen, you can click it. And anything that you've been saying while it's red will turn into text, which is really neat. So again, maybe you click here and then you say the words. Period. They will slowly begin to come up on your screen. Period. It works best when you talk slowly and clearly. Period. And then you'll notice that there are some words that have little spotted underlines, and it's like, hey, did you mean to say letter U? Heck no, I did not, so I'm going to leave it. How about talk? Hey, did you mean to say talked, or did you actually say talked? And you can change some of the words there. So this will give you an option to say some of our vocabulary words, some of those times that we need to say them prior to needing to use them in a writing or a reading piece. And that is really helpful for you as a learner. So if you have to, you can go and pause this video and go and install Read&Write. I highly recommend it if you don't already have it. If you do have it, take a second and kind of see if you need to accept any permissions. If it says, hey, do you want to use your microphone? this is an okay thing to have it use your microphone because this is something that uses a microphone. You're welcome to do that. Ooh, looks like you can also say new line and it'll send you to a new line. That's exciting. Good to know. That being said, I don't need it now, even if you do. I'm going to head back to the breakdown for today. So, normal rules apply. You should be saying the word along with me when we say the word together. And hopefully you're using read-write to say your sentence instead of typing your sentence. Obviously, if you do not have read-write and you cannot get it, you're welcome to still type your sentences. But what is going to be different this week is that I'm not going to take you writing one word. When it says your turn, the expectation is that you're using the word in a sentence. That's how you grow and learn. I prefer if you say the word. If you're willing to type the word because you don't have read-write, that's fine too. But one-word answers will not garner you full credit on these assignments because the expectation is that you're using the word aloud. The very first word that we're going to talk about today is the word ecology. Say it with me 3 times. Ecology, ecology, ecology. In a sentence, you might see, the scientist studies the ecology of the wetland ecosystem. No. The definition of ecology is the study of how living things and non-living things interact in an ecosystem. Interact is all of the ways that they either get along, don't get along, eat each other, use each other, all of those things. We'll get much more into that over the course of this unit. An example of ecology might be a scientist who studies the ecology of a lake ecosystem and looks at how all of its animals and plants interact, as well as with the non-living factors such as the water, the temperature, the acidity of the water, and a lot of other factors. There's so many different factors that go into each type of environment. Ecology shouldn't be confused with another similar word, which is ecosystem. They're similar because they have to do with the same thing. However, ecosystem describes an area and it's a noun, whereas ecology is the study of ecosystems and it's a verb. Whenever you see L-O-G-Y at the end of a word, you can wonder, hey, does that have something to do with the study of something? Psychology is the study of the brain. Words like that. Before we go on to the your turn, I just want to remind you one more time. Before you, as students, can read and use and understand an academic word appropriately, you need to learn to use the word 10 to 12 times orally. Orally, in this case, means verbally out loud, using your mouth to say it. So, by using your mouth, hopefully with read-write, on the next step, you're using that word one more time that will grow you towards using it appropriately in context. So now it is your turn. You will say, using read-write, or type, I would like to know more about the ecology of a blank ecosystem. I gave you the options of desert, forest, wetland, rainforest, and ocean, but you're also welcome to come up with your own. Do that now. Okay, moving on. The next word is niche. Say it. Niche, niche, niche. In a sentence, you might see, the niche of a fish swimming above is that of a freshwater lake, where it eats mostly mosquito larvae and kelp and serves as a food source for larger bass fish. The definition of a niche is, an ecological niche is the role and position a species has in its environment, how it meets its needs for food and shelter, how it survives, and how it reproduces. A species' niche includes all of its interactions with the biotic and abiotic factors in its environment. So this fish here, we said, lives in the water and it eats this kelp to survive. This does not include what eats the fish, which is also part of the fish's niche, its role in its environment. In my words, you could say that a niche is the unique job of an organism. What does it eat? Where does it live? What eats it? And it's not just necessarily one of the fish, one organism, it's the whole species of this type of fish. So what are all yellowfish living in? What do all yellowfish eat? What animal eats the yellowfish? The tricky parts about this word are its pronunciation. There are a couple of them. Some people say the word niche. I tend to prefer niche, honestly. And niche is the other way that you can appropriately say it. It looks like originally the pronunciation was niche. Yes, I looked it up. However, the Americanized version of it is niche, and at this point, both are considered proper and technically correct, but you need to be able to identify that if someone says niche, this is what they're talking about. Or if you hear someone say niche, this is what they're talking about. Your turn. The niche of a blank is blank. So maybe you give me an animal. So what is the niche of a squirrel? What is the niche of the tree outside your house? Do that now. Okay, moving on. The next word is species. We'll say it 3 times. Species, species, species. Apparently that one's hard to say 3 times. Who knew? In a sentence, you might see, the eastern bluebird species may visit backyards if food is offered. And in fact, I was looking at one when I made this. The definition of a species is a group of organisms that are physically similar and can produce offspring. My definition is a group of organisms who look similar and can have babies together. So for example, cardinals, that's a species of birds. Humans is a species. Polar bears are a species, as are brown bears. Dogs are actually also part of a species, and they're kind of an interesting one because they don't all look the same, do they? However, most dogs can have puppies together, so they're still considered a species. Generally, back when the definition of a species was invented, scientists didn't have microscopes at that point, so they kind of had to go based on what an animal looked like and say, oh, look, all of these birds have red feathers and brown feathers. They are all probably part of the same species. Now we can do interesting things like look at the DNA of an animal to determine if they're part of the same species or not. The tricky parts about species is that there are tons of them. So when you say bear, that's not necessarily a species. In fact, there are 8 different species of bears in the world. So I pulled them all up on the Googly Bear to show them all to you. Brown bear, American black bear, polar bear, giant panda, Asian black bear, spectacled bear, sun bear, and sloth bear are all the living species. There are more species of bears that have become extinct. If you think 8's a lot, you should know that there are anywhere from 9,000 to 10,000 different species of birds, which is insane. Your turn. I want to know more about the blank species. Go now. All right, moving on. The next word is habitat. Ready? Habitat, habitat, habitat. You probably have some familiarity with this word already. I just wanted to make sure that we went over it again. In a sentence, you might see, in its natural habitat, the hibiscus flower will grow up to 25 feet tall. Definition, the natural home or environment of an animal, plant, or other organism. So where is it naturally found? Examples, the habitat of an African elephant is the African savanna, a grassland prairie. Things that get tricky are animals that have been moved. So you wouldn't say that the habitat of a polar bear was a zoo because that's not where the polar bear is naturally from. So anything that has been transplanted or modified by human behavior is not necessarily a habitat. Tricky parts. Animals also interact with their habitats. They can all change their habitats in some way. So not only does the African elephant live on the African savanna, but it impacts the African savanna. Your turn. The habitat of a blank is blank. So you need to think of a habitat, like an animal, and then where does it naturally happen? Go. All right, sounds good. Moving on. The next word is population. Ready? Population, population, population. In a sentence, you might see, the population of lemurs in Madagascar has fallen between 2,000 and 2,400 animals, a shocking 95% decrease. Devastating. This one's for you, Evangeline. Moving on. The definition of a population is all of the members in one species in an area. So, do you see how the definitions are building on each other? If you didn't understand species, it's going to make it tricky for you to understand population. So this is all the members of one type, specific type of animal. Examples. As previously stated, the population of lemur in Madagascar is 2,000 to about 2,500. The population of mallard ducks in the pod has increased as their food sources increase. So you might see a sentence like that. Or the population of people who live in North Carolina is 10,490,000. Confusing parts is that population can really apply to any size. It's just what you're talking about. So if I just gave you the population of North Carolina, I could have also given you the population of just Charlotte. I could have given you a population of the whole United States. So population can be any size. It just has to do with what you're talking about. The population of a pond, the population of a whole region, could be anything like that. Your turn. I am interested in learning more about the population of blank that live in blank. Do that now. Next word, community. Let's say it 3 times. Community, community, community. In a sentence, you might see, I bombed that one. Let's try that again. Deforestation has a devastating effect on the community of plants and animals in the area. Definition is all of the different populations that live together in an area, all of the living things. For example, the community on the African savanna, and I kind of use this picture as an example, includes zebras, African elephants, antelope, wildebeest, Bermuda grass, elephant grass, and several species of acacia trees. The part that's kind of confusing about community is that it often also can be used in more of a social way where we talk about the community of scientists, or we'll say, oh, the community around me is having a block party, where it sometimes just means the people who live in an area or the people who care about a certain thing. In this instance, it's a little bit different. So that's kind of the non-science definition. This is more of the science definition of community, what we're talking about today. Your turn. What are some of the animals and plants who live in the community around your home? You could say, I'm realizing now that this is not in a question form, the animals and plants who live in the community around my home are ... Let's see how many spelling mistakes Miss Merritt made today. About 800,000. Ponce. The animals and plants who live in the community around my house are... Go. All right, moving on. The next word is ecosystem. We'll say it 3 times. Ecosystem, ecosystem, ecosystem. In a sentence, you might see, clean water is also central to a healthy ecosystem. The definition of ecosystem is all of the living and non-living things in an environment and how they interact. So this is the whole community plus more. And I think what I said for my explanation in my words is the community of living things with the non-living factors in an area. The tricky part is that it's so similar to the word community, which means all of those living things. The key difference is that ecosystem also includes the abiotic, non-living factors, like the temperature of the region, how much pollution it receives, how is the sunlight, is it direct, is it indirect? Do they see it a lot of the year, do they not see it a lot of the year? What is the air quality like? What is the soil like? All of those different factors also have an impact on the animals and the community that can live there. Your turn. One living factor you may find in a pond ecosystem is blank, and one non-living factor is blank. Key thing about non-living factor, though, is that it's not something that's dead, it's something that's never been alive. We'll talk more about that on either Wednesday or Thursday. Go. All right. That's it for today. We miss you terribly. We cannot wait to see you again, and I hope that you're doing okay. Bye. Love you.